The year was 1965, a year before the 1966 World Cup in England goes live, and no more than 3 people were assigned with the task of coming up with a mascot to further exploit sold goods for the tournament beyond its official emblem. These 3 in question would be freelance artist Reginald Hoy, his colleague Richard Coley, and last but not least, Walter Tuckle, who was the first of the trio to propose the idea of creating a fictional face to the then upcoming competition. According to Richard, it took them a total of 5 minutes to come up with who the character is supposed to be, with another 5 consisting of Hoy drawing the finalized appearance, rounding up to a total of 10 minutes of developing the mascot they wanted to make. The end result was an anthropomorphic lion wearing a Union Jack jersey going by the name of none other than World Cup Willie. And while there have been a few attempts at creating a mascot for the World Cups that were held in the past, Willie would be the first to officially have FIFA's seal of approval. Willie would then be publicly revealed for the first time via a press conference held by FIFA themselves in July of that year, and has since become popular among the people of England, appearing on mugs, badges, pennants, stickers, posters, comic strips, and even cigars. I'm not making this up. And what better way to showcase the success surrounding this little lion than in the form of a song, performed by none other than the late Lonnie Donegan.
Yes, Willie, he's everybody's favorite for the crowd.
With how big World Cup Willie has become since its inception, this encouraged FIFA and its associates to conjure up new fictional faces for future World Cups, some of which have even reached similar amounts of popularity to that of England's favourite for the Cup. But those aren't the ones I'm going over. Instead, I'm shifting focus towards the first few successors that came after Willie debuted in the soccer spotlight. Join me as I showcase the basics of each character, how much do we know about them in general, what the public thought of them at the time, and how one of them was connected to one of the biggest controversies in World Cup history. Might as well find out as we take a look back at the World Cup mascots of the 1970s. Given how well World Cup Willie did in the world of merchandising, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the people at FIFA consider him a bit of a tough act to follow when coming up with another fictional face for the football fella to pass the torch on to, this time for the 1970 World Cup in Mexico, the first ever competition of its kind to be held in North America. Now, without any further ado, I'd like for you to say hello, or more appropriately, hola, to Juanito. As you can tell from what's being shown on screen, Juanito is a chubby Mexican boy whose most distinguishable features include his wide smile, his exposed muffin top, his weirdly bent right arm, as well as his bright and comically large sombrero, letting us know which World Cup he's intended to represent. You could argue that Willie had a similar motif going on with his aforementioned Union Jack jersey that has the words World Cup written front and center, but at least it doesn't come across as extreme as Juanito's getup. Now, outside of the basic information I've projected into your ear holes, not a lot is exactly known about the character in terms of what the people of Mexico thought of him at the time, how often his imagery was used while the tournament was active, and most importantly, how much memorabilia was made and sold featuring his likeness, because when you look up any eBay listing for Juanito merch, it's rather small in comparison to when you look up eBay listings for official merch of, let's just say, Sakumi from the 2010 World Cup held in South Africa. The difference is night and day. Even PK, the mascot for the 1986 World Cup that's also held in Mexico, had much more documented merch among other promotional material of him than his predecessor. If anything, tracking down any form of official content surrounding Juanito in general is like the equivalent of finding a diamond in the rough. And what has been found thus far has only been just a sample platter. Among those that have been preserved online over the years, it would be a fool of me to not mention the song that was made based off of Juanito, written and performed by Ernst Huberty and the Mexicanos.
No freaking duh!
Juanito, Mexico. Juanito, Mexico. Juanito, Mexico. Juanito, Mexico.
It's unclear if whether or not FIFA themselves approved this track in any way, shape, or form, since their name is nowhere to be found on the official cover art, but I feel like it still counts anyways for obvious reasons. While not as good as Willie's song from a few years back, especially since the majority of the song consists of Huberty speaking on and on while the chorus repeats itself, I still think it's a nice little relic that's worth bringing up regardless. With the little to no amount of what we know about the character to this very day, it's pretty much safe to say that I don't really have that much of a proper opinion on Juanito. Unless if more material surrounding this heavyweight Mexican has been resurfaced after this video goes public, I think we can all agree that Juanito is by far the most obscure of the World Cup's fictional faces. Oh well. At least he was able to star in his very own cool-looking light show alongside his fully feathered partner in crime, Pico. Later World Cup mascots would also have their own dedicated songs, so be sure to strap yourselves in once we get around to them later on in the video. On July 6, 1966 in London, England, FIFA chose West Germany as the host nation for the 1974 World Cup, alongside Argentina being picked as the 1978 World Cup's official host, and Spain being gifted to host the 1982 World Cup. The latter of whom would even go as far as to help support West Germany's hosting duty, and vice versa. More on the two nations later. Since this is around the time when Germany was still divided by the infamous Berlin Wall, it would make sense for the 1974 World Cup's mascot to be represented as a double act, a duo of mascots to be more exact, and thus came Tip and Tap. In order to avoid confusion on who's who, Tip is the short one in black hair while Tap is the taller one in blonde.
We cool? Thought so.
Named after the tip and tap selection procedure kids go through before officially starting a match, these two rosy-cheeked, buck-toothed smiling boys are intended to represent the brotherhood of football, with the addition of being a symbol of unity between the then divided host nation. And contrary to popular belief, as if said belief was popular enough to begin with, Tip and Tap are not related to each other, despite sharing some common traits, as FIFA themselves confirm that their first double-act mascot are more so friends than brothers. If I'm being completely honest here, I don't really blame anyone who assumed Tip and Tap have some sort of relation to each other, especially knowing that they're both intended to represent the brotherhood of football as mentioned beforehand. Regardless, the mascots themselves did relatively well, selling a plentiful amount of merch since their debut a year prior to the tournament, including figurines, keyrings, plushies, badges, and even beer glasses. Look, I get that beer is among one of Germany's many staples, but at the same time, what makes FIFA think that kids are more than likely to purchase an empty beer glass just for the fact that Tip and Tap just happen to be slapped on?
Who thought this was a good idea? I mean, really?
They also sold candy cigarettes too, which, okay, I'll give them this. At least they aren't marketing actual cigars to the little ones this time. While on the topic of questionable merch, I'd like to give a shout out to these official Panini stickers where one of them looked like Tip just kicked Tap in the foosballs. Thought that would be interesting enough to point that out.
Symbol and mascots will be commercially exploited to raise funds to help the host country in staging the championship.
Looks like Tip and Tap aren't the only double act revealed. Like the previous mascots I've discussed beforehand, Tip and Tap do in fact have their very own song. This time, it's actually official, and actually has proper lyrics. The song in question is titled Ein Fuß, ein Ball, ein Schuss, ein Tor.
Jetzt stürmt unsere Mannschaft vor, da gibt es kein Zurück.
I got nothing much to say about it other than the fact that it's actually really good, and quite a treat to listen to, with Tip and Tap providing vocals for a majority of its runtime, all the while screaming louder and louder at the tippy top of their lungs as the track progresses. It's that fun to sit through, and I highly recommend you give it a listen in order to fully experience it for yourself. All in all, I personally like Tip and Tap, mostly because I'm part German myself, so I guess you can say I'm a bit biased towards these two, but also for what they're meant to symbolize in general. To put it simply, they managed to do their job well, in more ways than one. We'll be right back with more discussion of World Cup mascots after this. Okay, Bear with me when I say this. Of all the mascots I've covered for this video, I can guarantee you that World Cup 78's mascot has got to have the most amount of information I've ever witnessed during development. So much so that a part of me is a little hesitant to show all of it simply for the fact that this video is already feeling long enough. But I will try my best to give you everything you need to know about Gauchito. Created by comic artist Hugo Casaglia, Gauchito is a typical gaucho boy wearing Argentina's football kit, a gaucho hat, as well as a whip, making him the only World Cup mascot to feature such an accessory. I know his official name has always been Mundialito, but I, among other mascot-first fanatics, would prefer to refer to him by his nickname not only because it rolls off the tongue better, but also for how it fits his character more. What may surprise you, an outsider, that Gauchito himself was first created as far back as 1972. Let me explain. 6 years prior to the 1978 World Cup, the Argentina Football Association held a contest in order to figure out on choosing both an official emblem and mascot for the tournament. And on December 12th of that year, the top 3 mascots would be revealed by members of the jury, with Gauchito coming in 3rd place, who at the time was originally named Mundialito, behind a South American ostrich, aka a rhea, coming in 2nd, and another gaucho character coming in 1st place. Unfortunately for both the birdie and the other gaucho, they would eventually be criticized by the general public, with Argentine newspaper Crónica stating that the gaucho character that won the contest didn't exactly represent the host nation as a whole, while the rhea character that was placed in 2nd would be accused of plagiarism. As a result, Gauchito would be chosen as the official mascot instead, along with some visual touch-ups from artists Nestor Cordoba and Jorge de los Rios. And in May of 1977, in Buenos Aires, the little gaucho boy was finally revealed to the public, making him the official fictional face of the 1978 World Cup. But he was no short of being criticized either, mostly of how some find him a bit similar to that of Juanito, which I kinda get. Yet at the same time, I don't, as there are a lot of elements in the design that make Gauchito more so stand out than you would think. Now, this wouldn't be the only time he would end up in hot water, as not too long after the full reveal, he would immediately become part of one of World Cup's biggest controversies. Meaning, yes, it's finally time to bring up the elephant in the room. Brace yourselves. From 1976 to 1983, Argentina was under dictatorship of the national reorganization process, and with that came a bunch of changes to the country courtesy of the juntas running this campaign, such as the suspension of Congress and democracy, the removal of state regulations, limiting civil rights, among other awful and unnecessary additions. They would also be responsible for killing off a good chunk of the country's population over the years that they've been in control, leaving those who have been targeted by the authorities to never be heard and seen of again afterwards. This would be known as the Dirty War. Several banners and posters were created in protest that encouraged pupils to boycott the 1978 World Cup because of what was going on within the host nation at the time, some of which featured imagery involving the game's official emblem as well as Gauchito himself. Laugh all you want about how he was portrayed in these posters, but keep in mind that this goes to show how much of a big deal this whole situation was back then. In fact, it's not all that different from the controversies that would come in future World Cups, including the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. If you know, you know. Despite all the rage that was going down, the locals would eventually grow to love Gauchito, making him the silver lining to the 78 World Cup in a way. And hoo boy, you thought Willie had a lot of merch sold when he was active. Well, for me personally, I feel like Gauchito had sold an assload more based on what has been documented online alone, including, and not limited to, notebooks, figures, pennants, clothing, comic strips, stickers, dishes, glass cups, posters, keychains, inflatables, including this lifesaver that looks like a toilet seat, and the endless amounts of cards that he's been slapped on, including these cards where Gauchito is shown participating in different sports. Who let this boy play with this many swords unsupervised? I thought this was a card game, not medieval times. Oh god, Gauchito's got a gun! Everybody run! He's got a gun! And while we're focusing on cards, here's Gauchito in Egypt, here's Gauchito having tea in Japan, here's Gauchito riding a boat in Venice, here's Gauchito riding a horse, here's Gauchito charming a football, here he is doing the Kazutsky kick, and here's Gauchito about to lose his football in the Grand Canyon. So yeah, if that doesn't go to show you how popular this mascot was, then I don't know what else to tell you. In fact, he was so big that he had not one, but 4 songs based off of him, one of which is featured in this animated promo for the '78 World Cup. Look, Argentina didn't have color TV back then, okay? Give them a break. Now, you might be wondering, who's this bitch? This is La China, also known as Chinita, a female character who's named after female gauchos, and while isn't featured as frequently as Gauchito himself, she is usually seen alongside him from what's been shown of her so far, implying to have a crush on the mascot.
Boom, 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 hace mi corazoncito. Boom, 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 cuando veo a Mundialito.
To this day, Gauchito is still seen as an icon among the people of Argentina, even to those who are new to the character. I'm more of a fan of Tip and Tap myself, but I do have to give some respect to the fact that Gauchito was able to capture the hearts of his home country, even in the darkest of times. Viva Gauchito y viva Argentina! At this point, you'd expect me to end it off like that, thinking I finally finished discussing all the human mascots of the FIFA World Cup. And while it is correct that Gauchito was the last of the bunch, that doesn't exactly mean that I'm fully done yet, as there's one more character I'd like to briefly go over that was close to being the official mascot for the 1982 World Cup in Spain. Prior to the game, there was a contest held that was in search of choosing an official mascot for the tournament, with Naranjito, created by Mar Salto and Jose Pacheco, being the overall winner. However, there's one character that was pretty close to beating him into claiming that title, only to end up in second place. That character being a little boy named Brindis. Once again, not much is known about Brindis other than being portrayed as a typical Spanish bullfighter wearing Spain's football kit, but that's about as far as it goes for now. Could you imagine an alternative timeline where Brindis would win that contest, becoming the official mascot for the '82 World Cup instead? I'm sure there are some people in the Mascotverse fandom who prefer him over Naranjito that would have loved that kind of reality, but alas, he never got that far. The only way I can see him among other rejected World Cup mascots officially return in some form or capacity is if FIFA ever brings back the whole Mascotverse concept for the next World Cup held in North America. After all, the original mascot for the 1978 tournament was a completely different Gaucho character, so maybe there's a possibility for that to happen? Yet at the same time, it's too early to tell. Afterwards, future World Cup mascots would go back to the anthropomorphic route with only some minor exceptions, thus putting FIFA's human mascot phase to an end, making them a special relic of that era. There have been other attempts at keeping the human mascot spirit alive through other football tournaments, most notable example being with the Euro Cup, but a majority of them could hardly ever hold a candle to what made the likes of Gauchito, Tip and Tap, and, to some extent Juanito, so memorable and well known for a lot of people. Again, I didn't exactly go over all the info that's been known about these characters, but I hope this video is enough to educate you all on each of these mascots respectively in only the best way I can possibly make it. Ah, hello there! It is I, Kirby, the mastermind behind this madness, and I'm here to say that if you've made it this far into the video, then congrats! You did it! You were able to sit through it all! Words can't even describe how much time and care and resources and effort I've put into this, from the script writing to the audio recording, etc. If I'm being honest with you, it was both a fun and difficult experience for me to bring this whole shindig to life. I'm sure some of you out there who've done video editing like this will know exactly what I'm talking about. And while I'm still blabbering away, I'd like to give a very huge shout out to Uli, because without his contributions to the Mascotverse fandom, this video wouldn't have been a reality to begin with. I'll link below his YouTube channel if you want a good look at the stuff he's released thus far. I'll also link below a majority of the sources I've used as reference for the script. So yeah, that's about it for this outro. Maybe someday I'll cover the Euro Cup's human mascot phase, but for now, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you stay safe. Bye!
Mira cómo sube.